Hey, what's up, Stringlings? Today we're going to be taking a look at Unlucky Morpheus covering Far Beyond the Sun. Let's check it out. So fans of metal from the 80s are going to recognize Far Beyond the Sun as sort of an iconic leap forward, if you will, in guitar playing. So Yngwie Malmsteen, Swedish guitarist, best known as kind of the granddaddy of neoclassical rock guitar, neoclassical metal. And I've got an entire video coming out explaining what exactly neoclassical means, but basically what you hear in Yngwie's music is a lot of influence of Bach and Paganini and Mozart and what we would typically define as kind of small c classical music. Now, Malmsteen himself is not classically trained, as far as I know, and when he burst onto the scene, it was a completely new sound. Now we know he was listening to, Bach and Paganini because he spoke incessantly about this, and it formed the cornerstone of a lot of discussions in guitar magazines in the 80s. What's important is that he was trying, and really succeeded, I think, quite well, to draw themes from classical, specifically Baroque music, into the heavy rock vocabulary. And in so doing, he kind of formed this new style of playing that hadn't really existed before. Now, his first solo album, Yngwie J. Malmsteen's Rising Force, hit roughly around the time in the early 80s that Eddie Van Halen was really hitting his stride and really completely changing the concept of shredding on the guitar. And Yngwie's first band that we really know about was Alcatraz. He was replaced in Alcatraz by Steve Vai. So we're right at the very beginning of kind of shreddy guitar playing. And Yngwie's style in particular was different from the other guys. So where Steve Vai had more of a jazz background, a jazz fusion background, and Eddie had more of a blues rock, really American sounding style to him, a lot of bluesy sounding rock riffs. Yngwie was pulling from stuff that, say, Ritchie Blackmore was doing, so heavily influenced by Bach and Vivaldi, again, Paganini, and a lot of the early Romantic violin composers. So it's a little bit ironic that what we have here today, which I think, again, is from last year, but what we have here today is a violinist playing Malmsteen. So in the early 90s, we had a kind of a breakaway guy named Mark Woods who was playing neoclassical metal on an electric violin. Cool stuff. At the same time, during about the same period, we had the emergence of what's called crossover, classical crossover artists. So these would be musicians who were traditionally classically trained, who were doing things in kind of a more rock or contemporary rock setting. So violinists like Midori or Vanessa May, for example, the Croatian pianist Maxim, doing the same thing on the piano. So there's a kind of a lot of crossover between crossovers, if you will. Now, Far Beyond the Sun was, I think, a single from that first Yngwie Malmsteen album way back in the early 80s. And it's instantly recognizable to fans of the music because it starts with something very similar to Beethoven's Fate Knocking. 3 notes and a long one. Da-da-da-dum. Different notes, different key. And it is a piece that we all have to try to cut our teeth on. Well, our fingertips anyway. And I think super important that we take it out of the rock context, because a lot of times we put Malmsteen into the classical context and try to figure out what he's doing. But here we're flipping the script. So we're going to take it out of the rock context, put it onto a classical instrument, but this is a rock band. So Unlucky Morpheus is a kind of a crossover metal band from Japan. And I don't know a huge amount about them. I'm going to find out more because I really like this sound. Let's check out Far Beyond the Sun. Quadratum is the album. Okay, so that introduction, note perfect, exactly the way Malmsteen plays it, but one little caveat here is that the violin is what we call a concert pitch instrument. The guitar is actually an octave lower than the violin, so what she's playing is an octave higher than where Yngwie would have played it. That's just as a point of interest, but it does make a difference when you're trying to orchestrate things, to understand that middle C on the guitar is actually an octave below middle C on every other concert instrument. The guitar's range overall is actually somewhere closer to a cello, just in terms of range. So it's actually a baritone instrument by comparison. So she is playing this note perfect though, so it's super cool. And she's changing the articulation a little bit, that which Yngwie plays a little bit more staccato-y, but I think I'm going to give her all kinds of room here because she's doing totally her own thing. Once more through the intro, and then we will let it rock. Okay, back it up here. There we go. Help if I press play. Details. So that little bit with the scales, again, this is almost exactly structurally the same as the original. I'm not hearing a ton of keyboards. The Malmsteen's original band had keyboards in it, so this is important. What she's playing is an octave higher than where Yngwie would play it on his Strat. He's a very classic Stratocaster Marshall cabinet kind of guitar player, but that's very mid-tone, and she's playing an octave above that. There's nothing going on in between, so this guitar player is playing on a richer modern metal sound, more mids, a lot denser, very humbucker sound, and really filling in, I think, the EQ on this, which is great. This actually makes more sense on the violin than it does on the guitar. So these arpeggios, these scales, I so often hear guitar players, usually guitar players who don't want to practice, say, "No way, man, I'm not learning scales. Scales take all the feel out of everything." Feel means I don't want to practice. Okay, that's my opinion. You can take me to school for that one. But every other instrument on the planet practices scales so that you can get good at the instrument and fluid when you need it, instead of being stuck in just playing things that you're capable of playing sensitively, right? So you'll have kind of a one note thing. The flip side of that is that you can end up playing only shreddy stuff. I think that's what the fear is. But if you're good at it and you're talented and you're sensitive to music, you can create this variety. We're going to hear a longer line here. So if you're familiar with Far Beyond the Sun, there's a lot of riffing, but there are also very clearly distinct melodies. And she's going to play one right now. Let's back it up. So not a lot of noodling here, right? There's a recap of the introduction again. Classically, we would call this a development. A solo. So she's gone into this bridge. She has not actually deviated from Yngwie's soloing. Okay, so now we're going into a little bridge movement here that's going to lead us into the kind of guitar solo section where he would do the guitar solo. The whole thing is a guitar solo, but what we call a cadenza in classical music, basically a lot of improvising and showing off, right? As if that wasn't showy enough. So this is just a little bridge here. I'm going to pause for 1 second here. Her ear training is no joke, because this is, to my ear at least, note perfect to replicating Yngwie's solo, just an octave higher. She is jumping down the octave to his range a couple of times. But this isn't like note perfect. It's bang on. It's really surprisingly good. Like, just in terms of accuracy. So the guitar players jumped in here with what was on the original recording a keyboard solo. So that's really cool, actually, that now we've turned it around a little bit again. So he's doing that. It's a little bit different. So he's doing his own thing a little bit, but now we're going to start doing what's called trading fours. So trading fours is a concept that comes from jazz, where basically one musician takes a solo for 4 bars, another musician takes a solo for 4 bars, and they trade back and forth. And this is what they do on the original recording between the guitar and the keyboard, which really showcases the band. And they're going to do that same thing here, I think. A lot more than 4 bars, probably trading 8s. Here she goes. A lot more improvising going on here. So harmonically into the bridge to come out of the solos. Back into that sort of second melody. Now there's an actual cadenza. And she's definitely drawing on the original material here. Having a lot of fun with it. That's Yngwie. So this is a typical Yngwie thing. He actually goes from diminished sevenths to the dominant seventh, as opposed to resolving the diminished seventh right into the tonic key. So then he just kind of hangs out on that dominant for a while because it just lets him really stretch out his his noodling. Let's face it. This is a really fun band. Honestly, I've never heard them before this performance, and I've got a whole bunch of their stuff going into my Spotify right now just so I can listen to them. But just watching those is great. That was cool. Right. Wow, that was cool. So I don't know who invented that shoulder throw with the guitars. I had, when I was much younger and things were only available on VHS, I had both of Yngwie's live videos, live in Leningrad and live 85, and he does that throw all the way back to 85. I know Steve Vai was doing it. It's a Nita Strauss signature move now. You need really good strap locks. I think back in the day they used to actually just use washers and bolts and really tie the thing in before who did it? Dunlop? With the click lock. Anyway, I think it was Dunlop. But yeah, wow, what a great performance, right? I mean, that was just so cool. If you're familiar with the original Far Beyond the Sun, and I'm going to do what I did with the Metallica cover, I will link it down below, just so that the non-rock viewers in the crowd have a basis for comparison. But you can hear a lot more here with the violin solo than you might be able to with like an orchestra arrangement, because you still have that driving rhythm of the drums. Again, really great band. I think definitely worth checking out. We're going to make sure that you can link to their channel, so you can subscribe there. And if you like this review, this analysis, give it a thumbs up and please subscribe. And if you are feeling a little bit generous, take a swing by my Patreon. I don't ask for much, but every little bit helps, and just keeps these videos rolling. So thanks a bunch, and we'll be back again shortly.